I welcome you all to a kind of large roundtable discussion meeting here in this morning. Today we have Mr. Rostyslav, right? Rostyslav Pavlenko. Sometimes the pronunciation becomes difficult, that's why
but you did it right.
Oh, thank you. Rostyslav Pavlenko is the deputy head of the presidential administration of Ukraine. Today he will talk about Ukraine's domestic and foreign policy priorities. That is mainly probably concentrating on the recent developments, what's going on in Ukraine. And after his presentation, we expect some questions from you, and we'll have a following discussion after the presentation. So I think just we need to start, and the floor is yours, please.
Good morning, dear colleagues. Probably I start with a short presentation, and then I will be most happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much for hosting us here, because as we had a short exchange of thoughts recently, the array of Ukrainian-Turkish relations is very wide, and we have to actually explore and find the ways to make it fruitful and mutually beneficial. Probably I'll go into some key directions in which Ukraine is now going, and then we'll see what topics will be interesting for questions and answers. To put a long story short, Ukraine is coming to a point now, after almost 3 years of changes in practically all spheres, where those changes have to gain fruits, and we are coming to a sort of a break-even point, where the problems that were with us for more than 25 years now would start to resolve, and changes be evident both to Ukrainian citizens and to foreign partners of Ukraine. There are some signs of improvement. For instance, quite renowned agencies such as Fitch would point the investment rating or credit rating for Ukraine to B after more than 2 years of near default situation. It's now the investors, the creditors are speaking of Ukraine approaching a point in which it would be investment profitable, and of course the investment is something that would make a difference in the years to come. With this said, then it is necessary to both domestically and internationally to improve the climate and attitude to investors, knowing that unfortunately Ukraine is still at war. Russian aggression is not stopping, unfortunately. We have an annexed Crimea. I myself from Sevastopol, Crimea, and see my motherland under the foreign occupation, unfortunately. And the areas in Donbass are also still under the occupation of Russian troops and collaborators. But this is now a glimmering conflict, so to say, so we have to keep the efforts to bring the aggressor to fulfill the agreements to get out of Ukrainian soil and then reintegrate the territories. But and this actually costs about 5% of Ukrainian GDP. And these are also the costs that could have been channeled into much needed areas of social support, regional development, and other necessary items. Yet we have what we have, and with this we concentrate on the things that would actually help the country to prosper and to overcome the challenges of both foreign aggression and international ineffectiveness as we inherited the country in 2014. So one of the directions that is cited probably by most of foreign investors and foreign partners is the judicial reform. This year we had a change in constitution that provided for more transparency in the court system and the possibility to have the judges accountable for corruption acts. Actually, in the nearest months, in the first quarter of 2017, the new Supreme Court has to appear through a transparent procedure that would welcome judges, lawyers, scientific people, and others who can, from within the system, provide new standards and impose them on the verticals of courts to make them system of justice, and removing one of the problems that is probably most cited as the investors are concerned. Also in this field, to complement the internal efforts, the Council for Societal Oversight is to be created to oversee this whole system and to make sure that the system is really changing. Another big thing, this is also important for external and internal developments, is the program of decentralization. Ukraine inherited the Soviet system in which many and all items of development were resolved in the center, and now the logic is made more according to common sense, meaning that the closer the authorities are to people, to communities, the more effective they could be through people's oversight, through more direct competences, and through the possibilities of bigger budgets. The reform started in 2014. In 2015 we had the surplus of local budgets by 1/3, and by roughly another 1/3 in the year 2016. So local budgets grow, and this enables the communities to create the infrastructure projects, roads, hubs, schools, hospitals, all the communication facilities, all these that again are necessary to create the needed infrastructure to attract both domestic and foreign investments. The economic reform overall is also one of the things, probably the third big dimension that is in progress and will continue in the next year, is mostly the taxation and administrative reform. The taxation code is under consideration in government and to be voted by the parliament, which drastically simplifies the business administrative procedures, which probably is as much cited by the investors as the court system, and with this simplification it will be then easier and more transparent and more user-friendly to do business in Ukraine and to cooperate in different co-funding projects or cooperative projects. In all this, we aim at the creation of the environment, the conditions that would boost economic development and help the potential Ukraine has to be developed. And as we have now the international world and we speak of the region of natural interests, here we rely very much on regional partnership, and we see Turkey as our natural ally, probably in all possible matters and topics. And the level of communications throughout the government is quite high, ranging from President's visit here in March, and we expect President Erdogan's visit to Ukraine next March. Speaker of the Parliament, Mr. Parubey, was here recently, 2 weeks ago. Yesterday or the day before, we had a foreign minister meeting, Mr. Çavuşoğlu, and exchanging thoughts and also preparing for visits and profound contacts. And from the top political level to very detailed and special levels, for instance, head of the border guard of Ukraine visiting Turkey and being brought into the sea on board of military vessel of the Turkish fleet, also to exchange experience, thoughts and ways of cooperation. I was told by military guys back in Ukraine that actually complexes of Ukraine and Turkey in terms of military industries are very compatible and almost literally as a hand and a glove, meeting each other, so this can be very mutually beneficial to develop such things. But it is also very important that the reforms and changes are felt by ordinary people, both in Ukraine and Turkey. In Ukraine, we can find Turkish goods almost everywhere. But as we exchanged thoughts today morning, it's quite difficult, unfortunately, to find some Ukrainian goods here in Ukraine, here in Turkey, I mean. Although I think there is mutual interest to remedy this. The free trade agreement should be finalized. It's quite a long story, but we rely on the diplomats and on both government and academia circles to foster this and have it completed as soon as possible, so that both countries enjoy the economic surplus of this cooperation. If we look in the upcoming months, I must say that probably Ukraine has passed through the challenges that we face in the initial stage of reforms. We were in a situation where it was necessary to literally change the engine in the car that was moving very fast and having to return fire because it was under fire itself. Of course, such things are quite painful for people, and you can see in the media that many of people are dissatisfied with this. Yet I would say that being dissatisfied and rightfully putting pressure on the government, on the other hand, people understand that probably the alternative would be much worse. That is why we passed quite safely the possible political instabilities that some of the analysts were predicting. And this shows also that there is still support from the people in the understanding that once the results are delivered, then it is understood why it was all done. And for the next year, we also see, and this probably is concluding, but quite a big reform challenge to make those reforms seeable and self-evident for people, and also to boost and create the internal demand. Because if we speak about investment, if we speak about the flow of goods, you can understand that people have real possibilities actually to benefit from it and be able to buy the product. That is why it was a decision to increase minimum wage actually twice. It's still quite low. It's about 100 euro per month. It will be starting from next year. But still, again, it's twice the amount as it was previously. And also we see, and by the way, here we also follow the example of our neighbors, and Turkey is one of the most important to support the spheres that are very important for the development of society, such as education, such as healthcare. Those are also big reform spheres in which we still have to do quite many structural changes, because in many ways we still have Soviet or post-Soviet systems there. But as we start in increase of wages for teachers and doctors, we also hope that this will help to increase level of services and acceptance from the citizens of what is going on in Ukraine. To conclude in a few words, we are really looking forward to develop the cooperation we have in the region. We do rely on the relations with the Turkey Republic as one of our strategic key partners both in the region and worldwide, and we see the natural ways how we can be allies for long years to come. And internally we complete the reforms that would mean more efficient, more open and more transparent and user-friendly environment that will appear in Ukraine. And I'm sure that together we'll overcome all the hardships and risks ranging from Russian aggression and putting the aggressor into terms, and to all the unfortunate things that we see in the region, from terrorism and to social challenges. Probably I'll stop here and be most happy to answer the questions.
Okay, probably there will be some questions since we have different topics to talk about, both domestic and foreign policy topics. So I will turn to the floor if you have any questions. Yes, please.
Thank you for sharing with us your ideas and also the vision about your country. I would like to ask some questions about maybe the about the economic perspective of Ukraine. For example, how can we develop the relationships between Ukrainian and Turkish SMEs? So where can we start to reach your SMEs?
Small and
Small and
medium-sized
enterprises.
Thank you very much for this question. On the good side, we see now the restart of economic growth, which might show that there will be business possibilities opening. Then it's a very good question on cooperation of businesses. Traditionally there is one on, as you know, import and export operations, on trade, and the things that I mentioned, that Turkish goods will be found in Ukraine predominantly, which is very good to hear, and this, I think this marks the directions on which it could be done. To answer your question directly, there are probably several things to do. One, the better climate in Ukraine for investments overall, as I previously briefly mentioned, starting from administrative procedures, easier tax machinery, and courts that would be cleansed of corruption and injustice. That's one big thing. And then come technical things that might follow. The exchange of different associations of small and medium enterprises. I'm sure there are many in Turkey, there are as many in Ukraine, so using the possibilities of communication can make those connections. Also the question of different business forums. I think it will be a good thing to have different events of different scale and of different level, ranging from quite big opportunities of big enterprises and going down to spheres and niches of businesses, having cooperation de facto and broadening them, sharing success with their counterparts. And also, I mentioned decentralization. This is also very important to have local cooperations because local people might have special interests that could be covered in this cooperation with Turkish counterparts, but here probably information and communication are the key. So I take this not only as a question but also a kind of a task to foster the better communication, better informing from Ukrainian business community and into Ukrainian business community about, for instance, Turkish possibilities. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I am a foreign policy researcher here, so my primary interest is on geopolitics, and Ukraine is one of the most hot issues of international geopolitics for the last few years. My question would be, from the civil war, what should we expect in the short and medium term? Because when this erupted, the civil war erupted, there was a very serious attention from European and American circles, and there were serious sanctions towards Russia. But over time, it seems like, and I'm not an expert of this region, but it seems like the situation is somewhat normalized in the international community. So what do you expect from the international community as support, and how do you foresee the future of the civil war?
Exactly. First and foremost, it's not a civil war. If you have special military units coming into your country and inciting firefights, capturing buildings, it's not a civil war. It's an aggression made by Russian Federation through the special forces and through regular military units in the Crimea, including blocking the military units of Ukraine, preventing of normal life in the peninsula, and likewise in the Donbass, entrance of special forces. And actually, someone, Igor Girkin, some of you who follow the situation might know who this is, one of the Russian special servicemen. He would say directly that if it were not for their intrusion, no conflict and no war would have erupted in Ukraine. Because Ukrainians are very good at compromises, in putting down the conflicts and reaching solutions. So you needed Russian guys with machine guns for the war to start. That's first and foremost. Actually, Putin, president of Russia, in one of the recent press conferences also admitted that they had to defend the Russian speakers, although we see all the pollings made by international pollsters also that there was no such thing as endangered interests of Russian speakers. So the situation was used by Russia to attack and to create those problem spheres. Out of the war, you know the Minsk process that brought to the table Russia, Ukraine, Germany and France. And there is a general roadmap of how to get out of the conflict. And point one of it is the complete ceasefire, the putting aside of heavy weaponry, getting out of Ukraine foreign military units, Russian military units, international control over the border, then so-called political exchange of prisoners of war and hostages, And then so-called political component, meaning having the elections there under the auspices of the OSCE. And those of you who follow this, there is a Copenhagen Act of 1990 that states clearly what does it mean, the standards of OSCE. Security, freedom of press, freedom of observation, freedom of communications, freedom of actually candidating, and defense from all kinds of oppression or harassment, and all these. Unfortunately, this is unreachable until the first part is actually reached. And to reach the first part, you need the will of one man. He's called Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. Because the OSCE, for instance, acknowledged that 80% of all firings and shellings on the war line in Donetsk are done by the militants from the side of Russia and their local collaborators. It is quite difficult to move on with this process when you are fired upon. And unfortunately, there is a high motivation for the militants down there, because otherwise the population of the occupied territories starts to ask very uneasy questions. Why was it all in the first place? Why did you come here? Why did you incite this and made us to break up with our country? You didn't take us to Russia, you did not annex us as you did in Crimea, you are still using us. So to prevent this kind of questions and pressure, they unfortunately continue to fire and continue this, as they call it, a glimmering conflict that goes on and on. And that is why so important to keep the sanctions on Russia, because slowly but steadily it comes to the point of realization that it will have to find the solution to get out of Ukraine. There is a very clear example to this. In 1979, as you know, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Also on some premises of some strategic interests and protecting someone from someone. In 1989, it had to withdraw, bearing all the military, imagery, economic, all other costs. But at that time, Soviet leadership understood that the price of staying is much higher than the price of getting out. It seems so, unfortunately, that for Russia now the picture is very much like the same. The international efforts should bring Moscow to understand that the cost of staying in Ukraine is much higher than the cost of getting out. And Minsk agreements concerning the Donbass are the face-saving way of getting out. You only abide by what is agreed by you. So, sorry for a lengthy answer, but the question is really profound, and first and foremost, it needed very serious clarification. So, the perspective is that as international pressure on Russia continues, then we arrive at a point and the leadership in Moscow starts thinking of getting out of Ukrainian territory and abiding by international obligations.
I have an additional question to this. I mean, you are talking about international pressure. We Turkish sometimes feel that in the Syrian or Iraqi crisis that whenever the global powers agree on something, it's mostly detrimental to the regional countries. That is Iraq, Syria, Iran, Turkey, etc. In the Ukrainian crisis, do you really see a concrete international pressure on Putin's administration regarding the Ukrainian crisis? And you didn't mention the United States at all. what's the role of the U.S.? I mean, did the United States accept this fait accompli in Ukraine?
No, it didn't. Actually, the sanctions that are there and are to stay, as we understand, at least for the half a year, and as we see no progress probably for a further period as well, are the product of this consensus of the USA, of the key players in the European Union and other countries who follow this line. Of course, if we would have faster changes and faster creation of motives for Russia to get out from Ukraine, we would expect harsher sanctions, and we are asking and pressing this on all the platforms. And we see that there is a momentum to that. Recently, the voting the third committee of the United Nations that called an aggressor. Previous to that, the decision of Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Previous to that, statements from EU governments, and I see there will be more to come, to clearly state that what we have is Russian aggression on the independent state of Ukraine, and as such, then the aggressor has to have all the responsibilities prescribed by the UN Charter and all subsequent international documents. So we do not see the situation as someone taking the fait accompli. We do see the situation that, of course, the big powers are cautious not to escalate, but as they see that there is little progress, I think the pressure will continue to grow.
Yes, please.
Thank you for
If you introduce yourself as well, please.
Yes, my name is Mehmet Gökberçik. I work in the European Union Department in Ministry of Transport. We are, as you know, a candidate country for the European Union membership, and you are also negotiating, but not for the membership. You are benefiting from the NP.
Step back, so to say.
Yes, and your neighborhood partnership instrument, and you are getting a substantial amount of money from the European Union. As you know, since the conflict in Ukraine, the European Union countries were so weak and slow to decide on sanctions on Russia. And now one of the key players is about to leave the Union, which is UK. And all the sanctions are now decided for a 6-month period. And what do you think about the European Union's perspective on this area? Because Turkey and Ukraine is, especially on a geographical and strategical location, is a buffer against the European Union. And what do you think about this perspective of the EU?
Thank you very much. I see at least 3 layers and sub-questions to this. Well, first of all, Ukraine is a step forward from just this support, or the neighborship support program, as we have the association agreement that was ratified by everyone except the Netherlands, but the Netherlands up to 15th of December have to come to some point in themselves, and then this would be concluded. But as the politicians do their part of the job, still the free trade agreement does work, and the most premises of the association agreement also do work. We have, and this also actually gets to Turkey interests and Turkey politics. From yesterday we have this information that the Europeans have agreed on the suspension mechanism of visa-free regime, so they, again, slowly, very slowly, but still they are moving into some decisions which the pessimists were denying them to make. Yes, so I do see that European politicians and bureaucrats, they are as they are, but I think they'll get to decisions, and I would be not so pessimistic onto the relations of EU with Ukraine and EU with Turkey. I think that the mechanism is still alive, also probably not very effective for today's time, and especially as we see war of Russia against Ukraine, war in Syria, situation in Iraq, and all things that really demand very fast reactions. But still, we have what we have, and we not only hope, but we see that after all the long discussions and after long periods of pessimism, they do arrive at solutions. Actually, the second part of the question, the sanctions, it's the internal mechanism that they have those sanctions imposed for half a year. And every time, every half a year, we first have a strong presentation from the pessimists saying, well, that's the last. There will be no sanctions for next period. See how businesses are dissatisfied. See what a pressure there is in governments of countries A, B, and C. And no way. But then comes the period of making decision, and then there are things that outweigh this logic. Because there are still shellings in Donbass, because Russian aviation makes yet another bomb raid against Aleppo or other place where the peaceful citizens are killed, because Russians do not live to their word, which is something not very decent in international relations. And it comes that there is no other decision but to keep sanctions, if not make them harsher. So I would not be surprised if in summer next year the EU would be discussing not to lift the sanctions, but what to add to them. And you tell me concerning the situation in Syria and how Russians are probably at war in this way or another, directly or diplomatically or in terms of harsh talk to probably everyone else in the region. And third thing, I think it's rather about us, about Turkey and Ukraine. I think before and meanwhile our governments are communicating and making all these discussions and talks with Europeans on EU accession, we have to grasp the moment and develop the spheres in which we have mutual interest. Transport, by the way, I think it's one of the most natural things where we can cooperate, ranging from transport as such and coming to pipelines, investments in the region, and other things. So, all in all, I would be not as pessimistic to say that it's all over and we do not have support and things like that. I think that being brought to harsh reality, even European bureaucrats have to act adequately. I'll probably stop here. Thank you.
One more question.
Yes, please.
What do you think about the next sanctions to be decided by the European Union? Will it be effective because the UK is out of the league now, or to you? Because they are one of the key players
of Brexit.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I missed that. Sorry. Well, we now hear different voices from the UK. They speak about some grey Brexit. They speak maybe we might have another referendum. Maybe we think twice. Anyway, the procedure takes 2 years, if not longer. So I would not put all my stakes on Brexit, saying that it is the way that the Britain will go. But even if they go this way, all the multilateral agreements stay. And Great Britain as a country is actually one of the proponents of sanctions and more pressure on Russia. So the short answer to your question is actually Brexit doesn't play any significant role in this particular question. Yes. Somebody else? Yes. Please again.
My second question will be again the economic side of this aggression. How did the business atmosphere in Ukraine affected how it is affected from this Russian aggression? For example, are the banking procedures, finance, or I don't know, maybe custom procedures, are these working well at this moment? So
the obvious after effect is fall in trade with Russia. Actually, part of this aggression is a trade war, and Russia used to have about 40% of Ukrainian foreign trade amount. Now it's about 17 and declining. And EU and neighbor countries are substitute. So again, this I see it more as an opportunity, because it was a way of keeping yourself sleepy while still keeping the old, inefficient but traditional ties. The smoke industries were working this way or another, producing the metallurgy, chemistry, and other things that would find themselves in the Russian market, and Russians were using, got used to Ukrainian agricultural machinery and other products. But as this is cut, it is necessary to be very active in finding substitutions both in foreign markets for Ukrainian goods and of course the imported goods in Ukraine. So all in all, this is one of the evils that came more profitable. As the regulations are concerned, there are limiting regulations, but they concern not so much Russian aggression as such, but the economic crisis that followed. But these are being lifted gradually as the economic situation normalizes. For instance, the limitations on repatriation of the capital, the limitations on foreign currency operations, and other things like that are gradually being lifted and will be in 2017. Again, as the economists and bankers say, as the situation normalizes, the soon it is so, the soon all those emergency measures will be lifted, and then the vivid economic life will go on.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Good morning, thank you for the presentation. Regarding the situation in Ukraine, I am from the Moroccan embassy.
Moroccan embassy.
I would like just to ask about, you talked about military a lot. What is the expected regarding NATO?
We are in very close cooperation with NATO. After the recent summits in the Great Britain and in Poland, we have special mechanisms of NATO trust funds that are to help both Ukrainian military, Ukrainian economy, and Ukrainian industrial complex to be compatible with NATO standards. I think there are 7 of those trusts that cover main directions of cooperation, again ranging from purely military things, reform of armed forces and things like that, cooperation in different NATO countries, holding exercises and all other necessary components of the military thing, but also things of military-industrial complex, economic cooperation, continuation of regulatory reform to boost investment and to get resources through natural means, so to say. I would say that we get to the NATO as close as possible, and at one point we hope to become NATO members.
You you still
we still keep this. We still keep this target, and we go because NATO membership needs two components. One is readiness of the country, and another is political will, both on the NATO side and Ukrainian side. As after the Russian aggression, the quantity of people who want to join NATO doubled, and actually we have now the majority behind this solution. Previously, we had about a quarter of the population that wanted to get to the NATO, and the plurality said no, we would not want it. Now it's vice versa, and because of obvious reasons, if you are attacked, you need allies. So the political will is there, but we have to complete all other components in order to be a viable candidate.
Thank you.
Again, another question about geopolitics. A general problem in the Eastern Europe is the energy dependence to Russia, and you know that Ukraine is also dependent in this regard. Does Ukraine have any kind of proposals, concrete proposals regarding Turkey's involvement to reduce the energy dependence of the whole region?
Thank you very much. Could you say how much Russian gas did Ukraine buy this year? Zero.
No?
Zero.
No natural gas?
No natural gas from Russia. Substitute through our own excavation and bought from the EU on the so-called reverse agreements, so that we buy gas from the European countries, predominantly from Poland, Slovak Republic, and Hungary. As for your question, it's a very big one and very important one, because we can pick, because the array is very wide, starting from investment in excavation in Ukraine. In central Ukraine and in western Ukraine, there are fields of oil and gas. They were exploited in mid-20th century, but then the excavation went to Siberia, because there, as you know, it's directly put a pipe into the ground and had it pumped out. But now the situation is that those fields are more or less depleted in Russia. They need more investment to have this continued. And in Ukraine, it is possible to actually use those fields that were neglected for the years. That's one thing. Another thing, of course, the transportation projects. Iran is no longer under sanctions, so cooperation of bringing gas from that region is could be another ambitious project. Caspian Sea region, yet another ambitious project involving Azerbaijan, involving Turkey, involving Georgia, involving Ukraine. This also can be named. Speaking of oil, probably the shortest way, and it was discussed of Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan, which is working now, but it's also Baku-Tbilisi-Samsun on the Black Sea side of Turkey that might be used then to Odessa and to Europe, to bring oil to European consumers. So that's actually a wide field of diplomats and economic specialists of both sides to pick and to elaborate any or all of those projects.
Okay. Another question? Yes, for sure, please.
Two aggressions by Russia are ongoing simultaneously.
Right.
One Ukraine and the other is Syria.
Absolutely.
We are, especially in this part of the world, more concerned about what's going on in Syria because of obvious reasons, right? Because of the direct implications of the Syrian crisis on Turkey. Especially looking at this part of the world, we see a connection between what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in Syria as far as the Russian grand strategy is concerned. The question is, I mean, we don't understand the western part of the equation. They are, their inaction is mostly because of the crises they are deep into, from the United States into continental Europe. They cannot afford a direct conflict with Russia when it comes to Ukraine or Syria. This is the western part of the equation. But how about Russia? What's their end game? Are they going to stop in Ukraine or Syria, or what's their end game in Ukraine? Or based on your experience in Ukraine, what are their end games in Syria?
Thank you very much. I think it's a very brilliant geopolitical question because many times I think that especially Western observers underestimate what Russian leadership has in its mind. And we can, I think, draw a few historic examples, but I'll probably start with recent history. The plan in Ukraine was not only to annex Crimea and to cut half of the region of Donbass, but it was a plan to cut half of Ukraine as such, and actually brought the end to the Ukrainian state and continue further expansion into Europe. Putin once said that do not mix me with Gorbachev. Gorbachev destroyed the Soviet Union, I'll bring it back. I think one of the ways what Putin is doing, he's fighting the Western civilization for the sake of his own image of what the world should be like, and a great Russia role in this world. That is why he will not stop. At every victory, he sees as an opportunity to go further. And the only way to stop this, as I mentioned earlier, is to make such conditions for him that he should think in how he gets out of Ukraine, of Syria, of other places he went in, rather than thinking of how he uses the weaknesses of his adversaries to move further. So he goes as far as he is allowed to go. And yes, I also think that, and it's my personal views, not view of government of Ukraine or whatnot, but I also think that he plays both chessboards because I think he takes the thinking of Western leaders in a too linear way. So I create another problem so that you forget about this problem, and as in this problem I am left to my own senses, I complete with this, I then get here and I make them do as they please, because then I open another problem for them. I think you've heard the news, I think a month ago, about Montenegro, a failed coup d'etat, and Russian nationals expelled from there. The Balkans, I think, would be the next playground he would like to open if he reaches results either in Ukraine or in Syria. That has another problem for the West. Then the Baltic states, because again, I would not like to comment about other countries, but still they also have some groups of population that might be used as a pressure, and those are already NATO members. So unfortunately, I think he will continue to play this until stopped. That's
okay, one additional point to this. Is it because of maybe the European countries, in this sense, the Ukrainian state is not at the top priority of the United States? To me, from a global perspective, Americans, they are prioritizing the Chinese threat rather than the Russian one. So, how can you evaluate from a wider perspective? I mean, they concentrate mainly on the Trans-Pacific rather than the European context.
A follow-up.
Okay.
Especially in Syria, the elections in the United States was watched very carefully. Both Clinton and Trump announced about what their policies might look like in Syria. But as far as I follow, they were not very conservative about the Ukrainian problem in their election campaigns. What do Ukraine know? What was the reaction of the Ukraine to the election of Trump? What are you expecting from it?
actually related questions. Well, let's see what the composition of Trump administration is. So, sorry for a straightforward answer, but it's hardly a person in the world that might give another one. As we see from what is being constructed, I don't think Russia will be very happy. Starting from maybe second half of next year, because then there will be the formulation of foreign strategy of the United States as such. Well, yes, China is priority, but okay, China is an obvious priority because of the size of economic, of all other things. But Russians, I think, underestimate one important matter. They continue to be the problem, and their strategic attitude, if it's called this so, is to create a problem and then make someone else solve it, and then create another problem, and on and on and on. This is something contrary to how the Republicans as such would see the world context. So, again, to make a long story short, I think that the hopes of Russians that the United States will stay away will not realize. And I think by mid of next year we will see the change of the US policy from cautious putting fingers out to quite direct involvements. But again, that's a matter of analysis, and then speaking for myself.
Okay. Yes, please.
To add one comment about the conflicts in Syria, maybe we should look at the cases from the Russian perspective. They don't have the sovereignty definition as we think, because their sovereignty starts where the threat, according to them, is coming from. I mean, they have a strategy to win. You must hit first, and they have this perspective against the Western countries. And in Syria, they think that Syria is the last frontier in the region, which is a secular administration. And for Ukraine, they see the NATO bases in the Poland and other countries, new members to the European Union especially, as a threat to the Russian sovereignty. So that's why they are creating another conflict or another aggression to distract the Western countries to decide on a consensus against Russia.
It might be this logic of let's see what Russian interests are, let's secure them, and everyone will be happy if what Russians were for just to keep what they have. But in the logic of I'll bring the Soviet Union back and more, it's quite difficult to expect that they stop anywhere until being stopped. And so again, unfortunately, because we are speaking about very dangerous things for peace, trade, and other much more pleasant topics, but unfortunately, this sooner there is a consensus that Russia should be under very harsh and direct pressure, then the sooner many crises will be resolved. That's how I see it.
Okay. Nothing from this side? Bilal, yes?
No, I cannot.
Ah, okay. Okay. No questions?
Questions and answers.
Do you just want to complete with some remarks?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for this discussion. It gives me two big impressions. Well, first of all, it's very good to be among friends, and it is very important sometimes to clarify some points, to know that we all name the same names to same items. And second, this discussion reminds how much in common we have in interests, in fields of cooperation. So I think we have was huge homework to do to bring this potential into reality. So thank you very much for this discussion.
Thank you all for this nice conversation.
Thank you very much. That was all kind.